Got a favor to ask you. Please add your name to say you.
On that for now. Let's go with Ryan in Utah. How are you?
Hello, this is Ryan.
Hey, Ryan.
Hey, how are you doing?
Okay, how are you?
I am doing well.
It says here you deconverted last night and that there's no good reason to care about truth.
Yeah, a little bit of a stretch, but yeah, no, I do think that there is no good reason to think about truth or to care about truth. And I actually do mean specifically scientific truth.
You don't care about, well, okay, so first of all, science doesn't make any proclamations about truth. Not in any broad sense. It just says, here's our best explanation.
Don't have a hair tie up
Yeah,
there.
but is it not the best in order to obtain that which comports to reality, which we call truth?
The scientific methods, if you say truth is that which comports with reality, and the scientific method is the best way to, the current best known way to have an accurate understanding of reality, and you're saying that there's no reason to care about that?
I don't think there's any good reason. So,
I would strongly disagree.
So
yeah, I know, I get it.
Ryan.
I really believed this yesterday, or no, I said yesterday.
Ryan, if you were crossing the street, would you look to see if there were cars coming?
Only if I cared if I lived.
I agree. I'm asking you, would you?
Right. I mean, we make all these assumptions about...
I'm not making an assumption.
Other people should care about it. Well, that's why you asked the question.
I asked the question because I didn't know the answer. I wasn't asserting that you actually do care whether or not you live.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure.
Let's deal with the question I asked and not the question that you are thinking that I'm asking. So would you look both ways?
Yes.
Okay, so how isn't that, to me, seems like it's a demonstration that you do care about the truth to some extent.
But it's only because I want to survive, not because I ought to survive.
Right. No, nobody's saying that there's an ought there. I'm just saying that you called in to say that you don't see a good reason to care about the truth, and then when I ask you a question, you give an answer that shows that you do care about the truth. So you're saying that you do something without a good reason.
Well, I say, is me caring about it a good enough reason to say that somebody else should care about it?
That's not what I asked.
This is how we should do things? That's what I'm asking.
I'm not asking, and so the thing was, you do care, and you think there's no good reason to care. That's a quandary for you to resolve.
Right. It's what I care about, so that's what I ought to do. But if somebody else doesn't care, they ought not to.
I'm not talking to somebody.
This would be, but when you do, like when you talked to Rick earlier and, all these other people, and they're all saying that this is the correct way to get to their truth.
No, not their truth. There's no such thing. There's no such thing as their truth. Something's either true or it's not. And it's true that you do care about the truth, even though you don't think there's a good reason to.
Yeah, that's where I disagree, and I think I can prove it.
Prove what? You just proved what I just said.
That you're dumb,
do not
bro.
think there's a good reason to care about the truth, but you do in fact care about the truth.
Right.
Or maybe you're doing it for non-reasons. Maybe you're doing it for emotional reasons or survival or getting along or...
Yeah, those are definitely all possible. I mean, it could just be that we're programmed that way because that's what our instincts and our evolution have told us to do.
Yeah, and so if you're just going, so it seems like the phrasing of this isn't so much. Every time I address this, you keep going to what other people should or shouldn't do, or what the ought is, and at what point have I said there's an ought involved here? You care about the truth.
I just think that like it is implied by the nature of how you talk and what this show is about is to try to get to understanding that how you get to truth. That this is how we get to what we should care about.
No,
it may even be
no,
that
no.
care about it.
I'm on here because I care about certain things, and I have certain foundational views about secular humanism, and that I do in fact care about the truth to whatever extent we can get to it. And so if I care about the truth, I want to have the best methods to make sure that I believe as many true things and as few false things as possible.
What up?
I'm not saying that I can demonstrate that you should in fact care about that. I don't need to, because you've already demonstrated that you do. And that is the case for virtually every person that exists, because the people who legitimately don't care about existing and don't care about truth stop existing, and they're no longer a part of the conversation. Now, that is not in any way an assertion about an ought or...
Sunday. What's good? We're going to have our religious debates in here for our Sunday mornings. Just trying to spread a little bit of art and education. So yesterday I had a photo shoot that went pretty well. Went to a favorite location of mine. This place I like to hang out a little bit, but I've never actually photographed there before, so still trying to add more pieces to the reader series. We already have an underpainting ready right now for one piece. Just took some more photos for another installment to the reader series yesterday. I'm recovering from loads of drinking. Well, that's good. You can sit down, chill out, and listen to my soothing voice to help ease your hangover. But goddamn, so photo shoot yesterday. I think I took enough pictures where I can get one of them that's useful, and it will be added to the reader series. And then one of the biggest things I did yesterday was actually I had a meeting with two other local artists, because I recently moved to the city that I live in. Really haven't been here for a long time, just right at a year, a little bit over a year now. And so I don't know the art scene as well over here, and I don't know as many local artists to this city as I know to where I moved from. So just trying to like build a community or become a part of a community that's more local and centralized to my actual residence, so I don't have to drive 35-40 minutes to go be in the art scene. If I can like help create an art scene or figure out what is the most energetic art scene around here, and I can drive, 10 minutes to be in that type of group instead of yeah. And so actually these other two artists are pretty good because I didn't meet them. I didn't come across them myself. They were actually recommended. And so they're popular enough and they're doing enough stuff where someone else is like, yo, Trap, you need to hook up with this motherfucker. You know what I'm saying? So my one homie Grayson, a mutual friend, because I always talk about the art, so I'm talking about art, trying to get grants so we can fund different exhibits and programs and stuff here in the community. And so she was like, "Oh, you should check this guy out, a guy named Grayson." So wound up hitting him up on social media and been chatting with him for a couple weeks, back and forth, trying to see if our schedules can synchronize to the point where we could. Initially, I wanted to interview him for my TV show, and I still want to interview him for my TV show. But that was the first thing that I approached him with. Was like, yo, I'm always looking for artists who want to have more exposure, and we can get you on the TV. And so like I said, I've been conversing with him for about 2 weeks or so, and there's yo, thanks, yo. And then the place I went to take photographs yesterday, it's like this really eclectic, artsy type mall. And so one of my friends actually, he has a male's clothing boutique at this place, and I feel like I need to blow my nose. And so I'm over there taking pictures. I let him know I was in the building, like, yo, what's up? Chilling, blah, 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 blah. And then right before I left, shit. But right before I left the building, he called me. He was like, yo, you still in the building? I'm like, yeah. He was like, well, there's one dude who, he does a lot of art for the owner of the building. He's like, yo, he's here right now working on some stuff. I think you guys should definitely meet each other and see if y'all can talk about some ideas or whatnot. So I'm like, all right, cool, that's what's up. So I met him. Cause it's a big building. So I met him where they were at, and my man just started telling me about himself and his artwork and what he's trying to do, and he sounded motivated as shit, yo. And his art is fucking dope as shit. Like he has his own style. And so we busted up for a little minute, and like, I don't know, like that shit just, everybody just had time yesterday evening where I asked both of them, like individually, like, yo, if you're not doing anything tonight, yo, we need to sit down and fucking talk and brainstorm about some shit. So it just so happened that all three of us were able to meet up and sit down, and like I'm telling them everything that I'm trying to work on. They're telling me everything that they're trying to work on, and it's like, bro, we can start our own shit. You know what I'm saying? We could piggyback off of the shit that I already got going, because honestly, I'm piggybacking off a lot of other people's shit. You know what I'm saying? Officially, I don't have a lot of my own shit going on. You know, I've put together my own shows once or twice. But normally I'm just riding on the back of the galleries or other people who have businesses that can display my work. The Black Scranton Project has been a major boost into my publicity as an artist where people actually, you know, recognize me now as, yo, that's Travis Prince, the artist. And it's just last year I just met a lot of different people, a lot of new connects. Wrote my first couple of grants last year and actually won one of them. And so I figured, like, it's time, like, to build a fucking team and see if we can make some shit over here, yo. Cause I don't know, it just feels like the art is untapped in so many areas. Like nobody, like every city should have an art community. As soon as I moved over here, there's one art association. It's the Wyoming Valley Arts League. As soon as I found them, I'm like, let me get a membership right now. Let me get a membership. Let me be a part of this shit. And like within a couple of months, I was already showing. I have to drop some art off on the 16th for a show at their building. So it's like, and it's literally right down the street from me. It's on the same street that I live on. It's a few blocks down, but like this is a college city too. So I'm only a couple of blocks from like the university and the college and shit. And so right down the street, it gets kind of like artsy and shit, but motherfuckers they really ain't doing shit. And then like the couple of shows that I've been in for the art league, it's like them shits be sparse. Not a lot of people be coming through there, and then like not a lot of young people be coming through there. It's like, yo, gotta change this shit, yo. Like where the young hip kids at? Where the college kids don't even come through here and check out this part of the art scene or nothing. So I need to like figure out how to do something. Okay, my goal is a studio gallery. Like I don't want to. I'm gonna always have a space at home where I can paint, but I want to have like a studio gallery in a building somewhere. Have everybody art on display, and then have a studio section for classes and tutorials, and my own personal workspace. Like, and then like if my state ever passes legalization, bruh, my gallery gonna be lit, literally. Like it's gonna be too lit, bruh. Oh, the little YouTube motherfucker, yo, our community small on here with art and education, and ain't a lot of us paying attention to this shit, but oh, it's growing outside of this shit, yo. Outside of this little room right here, shit fucking starting to pop off a little bit. You know what I'm saying? It's just I gotta meet the right person. I don't know. I don't know. I haven't met that person yet. I don't know. I'm saying it ain't what you know, it's who you know. I need somebody to love my ideas more than I love my ideas. Oh, it will, cause I'm gonna keep on motherfucking and keep doing what I do. Oh my God, please let there be a water in the fridge, cause this shit is almost gone. Oh, I got waters over there. I would hate to go back downstairs. And that shit came down last night. Really? Really, PlayStation camera? Stop acting like a little bitch. Bruh. That's like at least an inch and a half, yo. That shit came down, boy. I hate this shit, man. I swear. Fucking hate snow. I really, really, really don't like it. It's cold. It's white. And it's on my property. Word, bro. They say this shit gonna be off and on for the next week, man. Whatever that winter system that shit swept the whole fucking East Coast, really, giving a lot of rain down in Carolinas. I heard Virginia had a state of emergency from floods. That was like 2 days ago, maybe. And then, but the further it come up north, that shit just get colder and turn into freezing rain and snow for us up here. Everybody down there getting rain and flooded out and shit. Tornado warnings and all kind of shit. And wake up, you got a motherfucking 1.5 inches of snow outside. I gotta go brush off my goddamn car. Tracking all this fucking dirty, muddy ass snow in and out the fucking house. You gotta salt the fucking steps and the sidewalk, cause that shit might freeze up at night and turn into ice, and then you bust your ass in the morning. Shit is torture. Shit is fucking torture, bro. You gotta buy special shovels for that shit. You know how much I hate fucking snow? I gotta buy shovels, salt, mittens. I gotta take my time to move this shit. Snowflakes are light and fluffy, and they float in the air. Wet snow on the ground is dense and heavy and hard to fucking move. Now I got a extra chore. I ain't asked for this shit. I ain't asked for snow, a winter wonderland, a white Christmas. I don't ask for that shit. That's a chore. I vacuumed yesterday. I don't want to shovel snow and wipe snow off the cars. Shit is depressing. No. I got on my old Tim socks. Yo, we've been making the news every week for the past 3 weeks. Everything we do. Even made it to Philadelphia. In the Philadelphia news. Oh shit. Y'all didn't hear about that right there? Thailand mall shooting leaves 20 people dead, 30 people injured. Yo, some ex-Marine dude from Thailand just went in the mall, just fucking murking motherfuckers. Yo. 20 people dead. Alright, so here is Fox56.com. That's the actual news, yo. Fox News. Had our Black Scranton Project exhibit features heroes. I made the newspaper right here for the I forgot what the section of it is. Whatever the section that talks about local shit. So boom, big ass picture of me, yo. That shit take up half the goddamn page, bruh. You know what I'm saying? Chilling in front of my beautiful art. Then boom, PA homepage. This is another actual live like recording. Local exhibit, Black Scranton Project. Boom, in the news again. Got my art up there, posted in the news. Everybody taking pictures of me with my new swag on. Yo, Luke, what it do? And then there was this right here was the big one though. The Philadelphia Tribune. We made it in the news down there in the Philadelphia newspaper. Black Scranton Project hangs Pan-African flag at City Hall in Scranton. So we've been in the news like back to back. And the last news article that came up, my homie, she posted it. When she posted it online, she was like, I know y'all getting tired of me, but shit, I was in the news again because she won an award for the top 20 under 40 or something like that. Top 20 most influential people under 40 in the local area. So she was one of those people, the real movers and shakers in the area and shit, yo. Like, doing too much. So, I say sooner or later, I'm gonna run into the right mother sucker. I can't wait to hear back from Harrisburg. I entered some art into like a state competition this year. People been telling me to do that shit for years. Y'all just ain't never do that shit. But I finally entered some art this year. And so we'll see how that goes. I think the grand prize is like $1,000 for that shit. But anyway, the past couple weeks been busy. I got 2 more major events coming up. So this coming week, Friday, is our grant award ceremony where I get to go receive my fat ass grant check. And then Saturday, the Black Scranton has some live music going on at like a little underground pub called Madam Jenny's. So that shit's gonna be lit Saturday evening. Probably have another little write up in the news about that, yo. And then it's weird, like, cause for her research project, she had to go into the historical archives and look through all the old newspapers from like the 1860s. I think the Scranton Times newspaper has been around for over 100 years. So she's reading articles from like the turn of the century. And when you read them yourself and you can kind of like see the people they talk about, you know, several different articles about this individual, and that's, you know, how you can tell who is influential. And now 100 years from now, they can read about this little city, this little area right here, and see who the fucking movers and shakers was around this shit. Yo, it's weird as hell to think like I'm going down in fucking like local history like that. Peace out. But anyway, guys. If you got a passion, yo, be real about that shit. Focus on that shit. Work towards it. Sacrifice a little bit when you have to. Because this week, man, I sacrificed all my sleep. Yo, half of the time because I'm trying to do stuff all day. The other half of the time because, I ain't gonna lie, yo, my nerves been high as hell. Trying to just make sure that everything turns out all right. and really didn't get everything done that I wanted to do. Because if y'all remember, I had 2 installations for the show, and one of them was the strongman lifting weights, and the other one was the burning house for the volunteer firefighter department. But I wasn't able to actually assemble that shit because I'm just lack of time. Like, I don't know, and I want to blame it on somebody else, but it was just a combination of different things. And I think even on my end, like, I could have did stuff sooner, but I really wasn't sure. So, but at the same time, like, I don't know, like, it really came down to the day of. I'm still trying to put fucking shit together. Like, the day of the show, I'm working, busting my ass trying to build this shit, but it still came out pretty good. So, still came out pretty good. So I'm happy. And we got mad ass news coverage from all kind of angles.
Universal imperative, it's a recognition of what we do. And I find that wanting to stay alive and have a better life is as good a reason as I'm ever going to get, and as good as a reason as I could care about. The notion that there would be some universal imperative for me to care about truth is just bizarre.
And maybe you're grasping for an absolute to replace your God.
Brad Pitt.
Say you deconverted recently?
Well, like I deconverted, I was actually, like, I've been an atheist for quite a while. Grew up Mormon, had a nursing path towards that, and now where I am at now, there's things that I've come to realize that make me believe that there is a God, but every assumption of that God needs to be thrown out.
What?
I might be more confused by what you said than you are having said it.
Yeah, I'm confused.
Yeah, what?
So
What the hell did you just say, bro? Let me hear him say it again. I think that there is a God, but every conception of that God needs to be thrown out. Like, you're confusing yourself, homie. Like, why did you?
And that now, there's certain things that I've come to realize that make me believe that there is a God, but every assumption of that God needs to be thrown out.
I might be more confused by what you said than you are having said it.
Yeah, I'm confused.
So, because it says here you deconverted last night. I know you're saying you've been an atheist for a while, but you're finding reasons to believe in God. But
from atheism is what I meant. That's a bad description. Sorry.
You're finding reasons to believe in God, and yet all the assumptions about God should be thrown out. Okay, I don't find reasons to believe in God. I find claims and people thinking that they have good reasons, but for me, good reasons is that which is demonstrably consistent with reality, well, truth being comported with reality, but good reasons are ones that are more likely to put you on the what I believe is more likely true than more likely false. That's how I would define what makes something a good reason. The proof is in the pudding, sort of thing.
Yeah, a little circular.
No, it's so the thing is
it is what it is.
It's only circular if I was asserting that was the thing. I'm just defining that here are the reasons that I find good and here's why. And you know what? Curiously, almost everybody seems to agree with me on what we should consider good reasons.
Yeah.
And it's based on this thing. You went immediately to, I should only care about the truth in that situation if I care about living. Well, you're absolutely right and absolutely irrelevant as to whether or not, is there a good reason for you to care about your life and continuing it? That is a subjective personal assessment. I would argue that, in fact, you could be wrong about whether or not you should be valuing your life, but we can't argue for the should. We instead need to talk about what people do. And if somebody, it's like when I talk about morality and people say, oh, well, what you're defining isn't morality, okay, then I don't care about your definition of morality. So I'm talking about well-being and living a good life and improving things for all of us because we all benefit from it. We all have to live together. And so if that's not what you mean by morality, then we're talking about something else. And now the second question becomes, do you care about the thing that I'm talking about? Do you care about living a better life? Because it doesn't matter whether we call it morality or not. But
I think that some people, in the same way that you do, like take religious people, they want a better life and living with God.
yeah,
And the way to get that better truth is through the religious worldview, the
Yeah.
scientific, not the logical worldview.
except that when we have those discussions and we talk about let's define what a better life is, unless they begin with only better is whatever God says, if they include anything else, I can show how their particular religious belief puts them in a position of conflict. That the things, you know, what? Sorry.
I said absolutely. Sorry, Green.
Yeah. But if somebody comes to me and says, literally the only thing I care about is what God says, I don't say, oh, well, because now they're not in a position of conflict. Instead, that conversation becomes, how do you know what God wants?
So I want to change all of the writing essentially on the chalkboard behind her, which I thought was really cool. So yeah, I'll probably just throw a bunch of conspiracy shit up in there, yo. Just like just like hella conspiracy shit, yeah. What's some conspiratorial phrases, words, or quotes, sayings, or organizations that I can add to this blackboard? But conspiracies that we know are actual and factual, like Operation Paperclip. Yeah. I can just write that shit right here. Operation Paperclip. But write it in a bright color so it's all pretty and shit. And people be like, what the fuck is Operation Paperclip? Go look it up. Shit like that. Or, of course, my favorite saying of all times is 9/11 was an inside job. So I'm definitely going to write that on there. Write some shit like the Bay of Pigs or Project Bluebeam or what's this shit was? Operation Fast and Furious. Ooh. A smiling face with a hand on his shoulder. Ooh. It's nice. Or the great Orwellian quote, Big Brother is watching you. That's a good one. And then it's on Instagram, low. And then I could add like some on top of the conspiracy, add like some other shit. I don't know. That's why I haven't done like even like sketched out any words or anything yet, because I really want to like know what I'm gonna put up there first. All right. Just deleted a bunch of goofy ass emails that are completely irrelevant to everything I care about. Man, I don't see no picture, no Brad Pitt up here, bro. The last picture you put up here on your Instagram looked like Bob Marley, bro. Need to update that. That shit don't say no Brad Pitt, fool.
And according to their own illogical way of doing things, that's how God is following it.
And you just said that their view is illogical. So that suggests that they should care about logic.
It does.
It does. And you're absolutely right, Ryan. And that's exactly where we go. Because
why should we care about logic?
Because there's no level beneath that. That is, reasoning is the foundation. So if you say, I only care about what God wants, you still have to have a way where you can discern accurately what God does or doesn't want. And that requires reasoning. Reasoning is the foundation. It is the one thing that we presuppose, which we also demonstrate its reliability, that we cannot demonstrate. And if somebody says, I don't care about reasoning, I can show that in fact they do. And you couldn't prove the foundations of reason wrong without assuming they were true.
What if I can prove that they're right?
Well, you can prove that they are. It's trivial to show that.
I can demonstrate that they're right.
It's trivial to demonstrate that like identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle are true. It's just you can't demonstrate that they are universally true and necessarily unviable. If you could, though.
I mean, we're talking about like alternate realities or alternate things, or are we talking about even within our own construct? Like,
they are.
Like, what do you mean by?
They are apparently absolute, but there's no way to demonstrate that. This is why the foundations of reason are essentially presupposed, and it's why we don't need to presuppose anything beneath them.
So let me answer your question a different way. If there were some alien race, would they discover the exact same thing? Would be the universal claim.
Well, the thing is, if reason weren't absolute, how would you demonstrate that?
Yeah.
It's essentially the one thing that we all have to presuppose. And it's not a problem to presuppose it, because one of the things is if you're talking about a method and you presuppose, oh, this is reliable. Like I'm going to presuppose that this pen works when I pick it up and start writing with it. And then when it stops working, that demonstrates that my presupposition was wrong. So until such time as reason stops working or somebody demonstrates here's a way in which reason is not true, and you would have to assume that it's true. Anyway,
you're going to keep scribbling.
So even those people who say that they don't care about their own life, I can't do anything about that other than try to convince them of why they either do care about their life and say they don't, or give them reasons to care about their life, or show that the things that they do put them in conflict. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to reason. Are you being reasonable or not?
Right. So I want to kind of go back to this whole thing about, I meant to say that with the three fundamental laws of logic,
yo, this glare is always so terrible. Yo. I'm trying so hard, guys.
Demonstrate is what? It's trivial to demonstrate them. We demonstrate them all the time.
That they're true, that they don't need a foundation. They stand on their own. Like you said earlier, that you cannot demonstrate that they are true. You can only demonstrate their reliability.
No, okay. I said you can demonstrate that they were absolute and inviolable. True is trivial. Aristotle and his band of merry logicians demonstrated.
Kind of off into philosophy here.
But anyway, go ahead as quickly as you can and try to prove the thing that you're trying to prove, which I think is trivial.
Okay, so take something like a fact. Okay, I think that facts can be circularly true, like something that I would like to call circular facts versus a circular argument. You know, saying that the
No, arguments are circle. Facts are just events,
right,
propositions.
but it's not just because they are. It's because, I mean, if
No. A proposition, a fact. Oh, there's a pink phone on my table is a fact. That's either true or not true. It's a proposition.
Has a true or false value.
And whether, so we may not be able to get to truth at all. So the key thing about a logical syllogism is that we know that if the premises are true and the structure is valid, the conclusion must be true. And if the structure is invalid, we don't know whether the conclusion must be true or not. But the real power in those syllogisms is not that the premises are true. It's whether or not you accept that the premises are true, because you may never be able to demonstrate that they're true.
Okay, so trying to get back to this, if let's just take something like the electromagnetic force, you have a positive and a negative.
Okay,
right?
Electromagnetic force, you have a positive and a negative.
Okay.
That's not, I don't think that's an accurate description. But for the sake of this, rather, just to save time, we'll just say that's true. So what?
Okay, so you know that a positive force attracts a negative force. Fact.
Keep going.
Okay. We know that for every action, there's an opposite reaction. That's why a positive force also attracts a negative force.
I think that's a leap.
There's lots of leaps, and the thing that Ryan doesn't understand is that the laws of logic are devoid of content, and you are looking at content, which doesn't tell us anything about the laws of logic. You cannot. This is the problem. The laws of logic tell us nothing about the content. They're describing nothing about the facts of the content. The facts are irrelevant to the laws of logic. You are taking measurements and trying to prove that the standard of measure you chose is reliable.
All you can
Really
say
simple.
is,
Just a single Venn diagram with a circle. And the circle you can label A, and everything outside the circle you label not A. And so the law of identity says that everything is what it is. And that everything, yeah, but it doesn't tell you what it is. It doesn't tell you that positives attract negatives. It doesn't tell you that everything has to have an equal and opposite reaction, which, by the way, is a fundamental law of physics that doesn't necessarily apply in a broader context. When you start putting content into the A, like you say, deterministic and non-deterministic, oh, now we've said what A is, and now we're not talking about the laws of logic anymore. Now we're talking about the content.
Yeah, I was using that as a syllogism, that how...
But you can't use a syllogism and talk about the content being true to say that reason is reasonable. This is the problem. This is...
A is A because of the fact that A cannot be not A.
How do you prove that?
Like A is second law of logic.
No. Okay. The three go together and all describe the exact same scenario, which is, in fact, appears to be true, but you can't say, oh, the second law proves the first law, because they're not like that. They are descriptive, not prescriptive. And ultimately, what you're trying to do here to justify reason is something that hasn't been done, can't be done, and is recognized as can't be done, and that's why we presuppose this. This gets back to, when Descartes famously said, I think, therefore I am, as a way to prove that at a minimum, even though I can't solve the problem of hard solipsism, I must exist in some sense. And Hobbes pointed out that that is based on the primacy of reason, that every argument you make is based on reason being reasonable. But you can't prove that reason is reasonable. You just demonstrate that it continually produces results.
Do we need to have a foundational reason to why positive forces attract negative?
But what?
Do Do we have to have a foundational reason to why positive attracts negative?
No, not to be able to observe that that's what happens.
Yeah, it's a fact. I'm trying to get at that the laws of logic aren't an argument, they're not a syllogism, they are a fact in the same way. They just are. They don't need a foundation.
Oh, okay, that's an assertion. How could you possibly prove that? I'm gonna let you go and let you think about that, because when you come up with that answer, you will have done what nobody in history has been able to do, and yet first-year philosophy students think they can do every time.
I know, don't worry.
Thanks, Ryan.
Anyways, okay,
Catch you later.
no problem.
Now, how
The
can
new
you
cover
prove
of
it?
Clean Fresh Skin Milk,
You
a
can't.
vegan foundation, formulated without formaldehydes, phthalates, parabens, sulfates, and talc.
Oh my God. People just don't get it sometimes, yeah. Like, it's just until we actually have hard evidence, it's just we don't know.
Kelly and Iran, thanks for waiting. You're on with Don and Matt.
We don't know.
Hi, Dan. Hi, Matt.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you? I'm sorry about my voice. It's a bit annoying.
Oh, it's fine.
Okay. I wanted to ask you. I've been looking into Matt's arguments against the causal argument for God's existence. But first of all, before I delve into that, the question that you raised just before answering my call, why would God create anything? Interesting question, and I think I can offer.
This is one question that I've heard come up a lot lately, is like, you know, when people try to describe God. Okay, and just by hearing the dramatic word God, we already have some type of visual representation or certain attributes that we would consider a God to have. And most people's idea of God is like this super being. You know? It's like almost completely perfect, if not perfect, a perfect being. And then the one question was asked, like, if God is perfect, why would it need to create anything at all? And like, when you think about it, that is a hard question to answer. Like, what need does a perfect being have for anything? If you're perfect, if that's the weird thing. I don't know. It's just like, and it's an amazing concept to me that people would think that their God is perfect, but he still needed to create them. And the beings that this perfect God creates are imperfect. And it's like, this shit doesn't make any sense. Why would a perfect being create imperfect beings and then punish us for being imperfect when that's the way we were created? It hurts my brain so much.
An answer, at least from the Muslim perspective, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I mean, here's the thing. At least in the version of Islam that I believe in,
The version of Islam,
which is basically Shiism, it's that God. I mean.
And everybody thinks Islam is just this one homogenous thing, and it's not. Like they said in my version of Islam, which is basically Shiitism, And that's how Christianity is broke down into all these versions. But you have one holy book supposedly holding all the answers, but you can't believe it the same way, or you only believe certain parts of it, or you only believe certain translations of it. And it's like, and soon as you believe it a little bit differently, now you have to box yourself off into this other denomination or secular cult. It's, I don't know. It's weird and disturbing a little bit.
Even the Christian perspective on God, that is, he loves people. God doesn't love. He doesn't have emotions. He doesn't have feelings the way humans do. And that definition of God really, me. God is perfect, sure. And the way I see it is, it's in his perfection to create people. We call it emanation. It's when God emanates being into existence.
So I'm curious as to how you know a God exists, how you know a God is perfect, and how perfection involves emanating beings.
Okay. So basically, the argument goes as follows. First of all, because we see that everything around us exists, and you exist, and Dan exists, Don, sorry.
All right.
Alone, based on the principle of sufficient reason, allows us to conclude that there has to be an explanation of why everything exists.
I would agree in the sense that if we begin with the assumption that everything that's part of a causal chain has some cause that preceded it, that it is reasonable to conclude that any observation has some explanation, not necessarily in the way that we might always think about it, because sometimes what we want to ask is, well, why is it this way as opposed to another way? And the explanation is it couldn't have been any other way. But
oh my God,
even using that,
terrible,
observing that people exist,
not for me, it's great for
doesn't
me,
mean
but
we're getting to the point where we recognize there must be an explanation. Doesn't mean that that explanation is God.
Oh, I mean, I see your point, but here's the thing. I mean, that entity.
How do you know it's an entity?
I'm using entity. You're right. That's a very good question. I'm using entity as a placeholder for something that I don't know, just for now.
Okay. If we would agree that you don't know, then how can you possibly? How can you believe that there's a God as the most likely probable explanation that you don't have?
I'm reaching that point.
Okay.
Basically, what I wanted to say is that entity, which is for now, let's agree that it's something I don't know. It's not even a something. That entity has to have been one entity. At least we can agree on the fact that it's one.
No.
Why not?
Why not?
Because if somebody said, what's the explanation for the Atheist Experience TV show? And somebody could argue that it's me. They'd be wrong. There's a ton of people that are involved with it. There's people on the other side of the wall. There's a long history to this. It wasn't just a single person. Now, we may get back to a point where there was one person in a discussion who said, hey, let's do a TV show. It was, but my understanding is that for this, it was Joe Zemecki and Tom Rhodes and some others talking about it. But it would be wrong to just assume that it's one thing. Just like when a fire starts, there's a fire triangle, which involves heat, oxygen, and fuel. It's not just one thing that is contributing causally to fire. It necessarily is three things. So if there's something that we don't know what the explanation is, I don't know what justification you could ever have for claiming it's necessarily one thing.
Because, okay, that's a very interesting thing regarding the fire. That requires three things. Because here's where I'm coming from. I see things that two causes can never result in exact same thing in the exact same way. Agree on that, or?
How can you prove that? That's what I'm saying. So many people just
it depends on
assume
what you
so
mean by
much
exact
shit.
same thing. For
Yeah.
example, going back to first of all, the fire, I still think that's a roadblock to what you just said. But if I roll a die and it comes up a 4, and I roll a die again and it comes up a 4, you could say, well, if we really look down and get, kind of reductive on this, these things happen at different times, and so everything about the physical universe was slightly different, etc. But the resolution at which we can reasonably define what happens to a die when you roll it is about the shape of the die, the surface that it's hitting, the physics, and it doesn't necessarily hit the same spot. But if you look at the result of it rolled a 4, that can arise from a multitude of different individual actions, right?
Of course, but my point is that there's only one hand throwing the die.
How do you know? I can throw it with 2 hands.
That's exactly what I don't.
And the
agree
table
with.
can have various.
Don and I can hold on to the die together and let go at the same time. Now there's 2 of us dropping the die, and it requires both of us to let go in order for that die to drop.
But it requires only one person for it to drop.
No, if I'm holding on to the 2 and 5, and Don's holding on to the 6 and 1, and I let go, that die doesn't drop because Don's still holding
Exactly.
it. And if Don lets go and I don't, the die doesn't. What do you mean exactly? I'm literally showing you that here's something that would require 2 individual agents to act in order for this to happen, and you're saying exactly it's one person.
I agree. I mean, that point is completely fair. My point is that you can't hold the die in a sense, and this on 2 ends of it.
Yes, you can. I can do it with the phone. Look, there's this side. There's this side, which is a little long for me. Then there's this way. And if I hold here and Don holds, no, not the same ones. Yeah, like opposite. Now, when I let go, the phone doesn't fall. And if Don lets go, the phone doesn't fall. You can do the same thing. This is an elongated cube, essentially, or
These are really bad magic tricks, man.
yeah, they're the worst. But I'll show you a better one later.
Okay.
All right. So, what do you mean you can't hold a die by the ends when I can demonstrate to you that we can? If I had a die here, I'd show you with a die. But I was hoping that my phone, which is a good approximation,
Now
of
the
die,
conversation
would-
is breaking down so much, trying to find a perfect analogy, but you can't say that it was just one action that produced everything or whatever, yo.
Can I give another example? Because I think that one would be fair.
Okay.
Basically, for example, if you're shooting a bullet at a window, if you're shooting, let's say, 2 guns, okay, and both bullets hit the window at the same exact time, will break. So you can say, sure, that the bullets, both of them, caused the window to break. Problem arises when we think that there's no problem. It's just the fact that the 2 bullets have to exist in 2 different positions relative to the window.
Yes.
They couldn't.
And they break the window in 2 different locations.
Sure, but they don't break it in the exact same way.
That's what I just said. They break it in 2 different locations.
Exactly. So they don't break it in the same way.
So
They
what?
keep it together, sure.
So what? I don't even know why you came up with an example of 2 bullets. See, this is like the guy who tried to point to the things that were good in the Bible as a way of avoiding talking about the things that are bad. I can shoot a single bullet at a window and it'll break a window. I don't need two for that.
Exactly.
So why would you come up with an example that doesn't require 2 as if it's a refutation of an example that does require 2?
Because this is the case where this is how the universe must have came about. And this.
Whoa.
It's a big leap.
How do you know how the universe must have come about? Because we're still working on that.
I mean, because here's the thing: the universe is a fact, isn't it?
Universe.
You and I are in agreement that the universe exists.
And I really hope we agree on that.
Do we agree that we don't know how or why the universe exists?
Of course.
Then why did you just pretend to know how or why the universe exists? If we don't know how or why the universe exists, you can't claim that the universe must have come from a single thing.
Because of the fact that the universe couldn't have come into existence.
That's not a fact. That's an assertion by you. You just acknowledged that we don't know how or why, and now you're going on to make claims about what you know about the origin of the universe.
I can start to see your point.
This is one of those things where it's our intuitions and our frustration with not knowing, where we look at this and we go, oh, well, of course, if the universe had a beginning, it must be something like this. And yet we also have to acknowledge that we don't know that we can't explore that we don't currently have evidence for it. The best thing we have is sort of, currently we have the modern Big Bang cosmology, but that doesn't explain the how or why. It's more of an explanation of what. And right now we can't even get back beyond the Planck time.
And there are whole realms of physics that defy intuition and our armchair understanding.
Yeah, but I think those are magical thinking.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I am a big fan of falsifiability and demonstration, and the fact that you have a model that can make reasonable predictions is neat. But it reminds me of essentially like Newtonian physics, which it works well in the context in which it works, and yet it does not accurately describe what's going on at the universe at another resolution.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so until we're able to investigate and explore the universe at the particular resolution that we want to provide an explanation, it would be a mistake for us to make any kind of claim about what the nature of that explanation might be. For example, the origin of the universe, it could be the Abrahamic God. It could be the God of some other religion. It could be some sort of multiverse thing. It could be universe creating pixies. It could be, and I'm not saying it, let me correct this. I'm not saying those are actual epistemic possibilities. I'm saying that those are things that we cannot rule out. And so if I have 20 things that I can't rule out, and potentially an infinite pool of things that I know nothing about, not only can I not say that the answer must be one of the 20 things that I can't rule out, but since I can't rule out the things that I don't know, it would be a mistake for me to say that it must be one of these 20. That's the arrogance that we do. This is why the argument from ignorance, which is I'm right until you prove me wrong, and the argument from personal incredulity, which is I'm going to stick with this explanation because I can't think of anything better, are both more about us and our failure to recognize the limits of our understanding and our discomfort with saying, I don't know. And so when somebody says, ask me, what's your explanation for the origin of the universe? I don't have one. Well, doesn't that make you uncomfortable? Yeah, it really does. I'd love to know. But the difference is I'm not willing to pretend that I know, and I'm not willing to make claims about the nature of what the cause might be when I have to recognize that I don't know anything about the nature of what the cause might be.
And how can you live with that?
There's a lot of things we don't know, and there's a finite amount of time.
Because I'd rather live being intellectually honest and open to explanations that are supported by evidence than to say, wow, I don't want to live in a world where I don't know where the universe originated, so I'm going to make something up. The comforting lie that we tell ourselves is not, yes, people do that because they're just comforting. But your question of how can you live with that? If you pretend that you have the answer, you stop looking for the answer, and you mire the world in ignorance forever. And while it may be a comforting, ignorant lie, it's still a comforting, ignorant lie. And if you stop with that comforting, ignorant lie and say, let's go out and see what we can discover, we may never be able to know what the true explanation of the origin of the universe is. But as soon as we put up that roadblock, it leads us to the temptation to start putting up other roadblocks to things that we might be able to know. When religions pretend to have the answers to things that humans don't know, some people are not satisfied with the comforting lie. And so they go out and explore, and they find out, you know what, the Earth isn't the center of our solar system or the universe. You know what? Lightning doesn't come from Thor, Odin, etc. Sorry, Ocean. All of these things that we'd want to know, anybody can come up with religion that says, here's the explanation. Why do some men like men? What's the explanation for that? Why are some people born intersex? People have gender dysphoria and ideas like that. Why do some people have lighter skin and some people have darker skin? If we just went with what religions have claimed, we would
be poor.
The world would be devoid of technology, of understanding, of the sort of inspiration that makes you go out and look for answers. When you say, how can you live not knowing that? I don't know how anybody could live without realizing that they don't know it. Life is about this pursuit of finding out and understanding the world. And if you're willing to just take whatever comforting lie somebody offers you, I don't know that you're living. You're existing, you're persisting, but without that sort of curiosity, without this drive to find out what the hell is actually going on, that would be the life that would suck for me.
But my perspective is that, first of all, thank you so much for that. Really made me open my eye on several things.
I'm happy, thank you.
Yeah, but one of the things that I might disagree with slightly is the fact that living with a religion makes you so close-minded. I mean, one of the things you mentioned is gender dysphoria, and I myself have gender dysphoria, as you might have realized.
Yeah.
It is, I mean, in Iran specifically, one of the main things they were against was admitting that gender dysphoria should be treated, and men who feel that their women should be treated, and vice versa. This was an issue in Iran, and it wasn't solved and wasn't accepted until recently. But here's the thing: they accepted it. It was something that, at the end of the day, something that's fine.
But to the extent that somebody's accepted it, wasn't religion a roadblock to preventing this from being accepted much, much earlier?
But here's the thing. My perspective is that religion was the thing that people open-minded about it. The religion that was against it, I believe that the people were, and the religion helped the people open their eyes, in a sense. Is that because in the Quran itself it says you should think. The day that was the thing that made people realize that it's not an issue.
What does the Quran say about sexuality and gender? Is it supportive of homosexuality? Is it supportive?
Homosexuality is a different issue. It's not.
Sorry?
It's not gender dysphoria. Homosexuality is not.
I know. I wasn't done.
Okay.
When it talks about homosexuality, I don't think the Quran's in favor. But when we talk about transitioning from one gender identity and expression to another, I don't think the Quran's in favor of that either.
It doesn't say anything about it, actually.
Well,
yeah,
I agree that it probably doesn't use those terms, but
exactly, it doesn't.
But you don't think it talks about the concepts at all?
It talks about. I mean, here's the thing:
what it is to be a man, what it is to be a woman, what those roles are. Because if the Quran was actually okay with someone who was assigned female at birth transitioning to a man to conform to their own understanding of their gender, then why on earth would we have different roles for men and women in the first place in different positions? If you say men can do this and women can do this, and then someone who was assigned female at birth says, "Oh, I'm going to transition and be a man,"
and have more rights.
Now there's no reason to have those roles, where men have rights and women don't. I was assigned female at birth, but I'd like to drive a fucking car without having a male chaperone around me. So I'm going to transition to be a man. I understand that's not what the gender dysphoria is, but when I'm talking about from the model from the Quran, I think the concepts are there, that women are inferior, that they don't have the same rights as men. And so this notion of people, that's not what?
That's definitely not the reason I would transition to a man.
I didn't remotely say that that's why.
Okay. So
let me back this up, because I'm not talking about the reason that you would. Okay. I'm saying if you have a religious structure that says every man gets these rights and women don't, and yet we're okay with any one of you identifying as either man or woman, that erases the need to have the distinction between the two of them. And I don't think that that the notion of transitioning is consistent with the Quran.
But that's, I mean, I don't get that point, honestly, because, I mean, sure, it does talk about the different roles, but that's only for as a social structure. It was talking.
It's all a social structure.
Yeah, so it was only talking about that. It wasn't touching on the idea of not having or not allowing transitioning. I mean, sure, the roles are there, and that's exactly why I'm transitioning, because my inner self more agrees with those roles than other roles. Those are important and they're there. Goes against what you said, but I have to make that clear.
Well, we may need to do more research on the Quran, but certainly there's this idea in the United States of from the Christian community that God made you a certain way, and if you think you need to change, then you are wrong, and God is not wrong. There's certainly that idea.
That's horrible. That's horrible. No, in fact, God made you a certain way, and you're willing to change.
Prove it.
What?
Prove God made me anyway.
Hypothetically speaking, right?
I'm not an expert on the Quran, so I'm not going to keep digging in on it. But I find it bizarre, after having so many Muslim and ex-Muslim friends over the years, that anyone could suggest that the Quran is in any position other than directly in opposition to the notion that someone can transition gender. This is a concept that would not even have existed or been broached at the time in the way that we do it now.
Exactly. That's why it has no say on it.
That's absolutely ridiculous.
Why? The default position is that it's permissible unless stated otherwise, and it's not stated otherwise.
Because motherfuckers weren't doing gender reassignment surgeries fucking 1,500 years ago. Like that shit wasn't a fucking thing. I don't think. Like, I don't know. Chicks weren't like chopping their boobs off and dudes chopping their dicks off like, I want to be a girl, I want to be a man. Like, that's why they don't talk about transitioning or gender reassignment, because it wasn't a possibility without modern day surgery and shit. So, well, it's free game because my religious book doesn't say yay or nay about it, because it wasn't even a fucking concept. There was no way to conceptualize like a complete gender reassignment with surgery and hormone therapy, and like nobody thought about that shit back then.
Someone brings out a verse and explains it in a certain way, then different story.
Okay, so here's a piece of advice. I wouldn't run around in most of the Muslim-led countries suggesting that the Quran is okay with people transitioning gender.
I definitely wouldn't do that, but I mean...
And why wouldn't you do it? Would you fear for your life?
No, because the version of Islam that they have is a horrible one.
Oh, they just haven't found the right Islam.
It's a true Islam problem, right?
Well, that's good.
Yeah, that's why there are different sects.
We know that one.
Yeah, we get that from Christians all the time. So congratulations, you're all engaged in the same sort of confirmation bias batshittery.
But my point was that that in Iran, it's widely understood. I mean, we study philosophy, we study ethics, and it's widely understood what the Quran is. It's just an example in Saudi Arabia.
What is it? Iran is an unusual country in the education level of the populace, and it doesn't have quite the religious stronghold that other, like say Pakistan or Saudi Arabia has, as far as the strength of the religion and the power of the religion and such is a bit different there.
What this conversation's turned into, so there's a ton of different Christian denominations, and I'll stick largely with what I know. Bunch of gay-friendly churches, all over the place. There's one here in town we use on occasion for meeting place, crosses and rainbows all over. The Bible is directly in opposition to homosexuality. There's no...
Of course.
Okay, and so the people who are suggesting that Christianity is compatible with homosexuality are inventing a heresy. Now, I'm in agreement with them about, homosexuality rights and freedoms and stuff like that. But they're inventing a heresy. And so there's no way for them to show that they have the right version of Christianity and let's say some jackass like Steven Anderson has the wrong version. And yet you're calling in to talk about Islam and to say that, oh, those other versions are wrong. Well, how do you know yours is right?
Boozy, what up?
Because wouldn't it also make sense that you have picked or massaged a version of Islam to conform to what you want it to be?
I don't know.
You don't know that answer though.
And until somebody gives me a way to know, I'm stuck looking at both of them and saying, it's like, we'll go back to a die roll. Somebody rolled a die in a box, and neither Don or I can see it. Don starts the religion that the die roll was a 2, and I start the religion that the die roll was a 5, and we are forever blocked from demonstrating which of us is actually correct, and yet we will fight wars and kill people left and right because I'm convinced that Don is a fucking heretic. How dare you think a 2 could come up? A 2, by the way, is always on the opposite side of a 5 on a correctly standard 6-sided die. So you are on the satanic. See, this is the way this works. And so to outsiders, we need some way to know how one comes about understanding that their version is correct. And it all gets back to the foundations that we were talking about earlier, where I have no evidence that a God exists. I have no evidence that a God participated in either the beginnings of the universe, the beginnings of the Old Testament, the beginnings of the Quran, any of these things. So quite frankly, I don't give a crap what any of the books say. None of them are authoritative or instructive for me. When people point to them and say, oh, well, this part of the book is not nearly as bad as the other parts of the book. We did that earlier with a Christian. So you're basically saying, hey, the Quran doesn't actually speak about trans issues, and since it's not expressly prohibited, then Islam must in fact be in favor of transitioning. And yet I bet if you were to go back in time and around the origins of Islam, around the time the Quran was written, and try to explain the concept of transitioning gender, I think that it would be prohibited based on everything else that's in there. It's just that they didn't have an understanding of this.
Exactly what I said. There was no concept of that shit.
It's almost like there's no real mention of lesbianism in the Bible, because I don't think any of the men who wrote it had a clue that existed.
It's like, what else isn't in the Quran? Prohibitions against manipulating DNA. Does that mean it's permissible?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Now look.
No.
I want to backtrack a minute, Kelly, if I can, because I know that you are in a particularly difficult spot, and we're on the show, we're having these discussions.
Don't be sad now.
You
got your bubble burst.
Look into this.
Facts are facts.
Is there evidence for this, and is this reasonable? And despite what some people think, my goal isn't necessarily to convince people that their belief is wrong as much as it is to point out why I don't share their beliefs, why it's not convincing for me or us. You are in a much more difficult spot as a transgender person, as a Muslim. You're trying to find your way through all this, and I want you to know that irrespective of what you believe about a God or Islam or anything else, you are a valued human being with rights, and we are fully supportive of your transition process and who you are as a person, even if you wind up inventing a version of Scientology that is fine with who you are. my concern at the outset of this was when we were talking about, causality and origins and stuff. I just have questions, and I love the fact that one of your questions that I spent the most time on was, how can you live not knowing? That's the thing that most of us are uncomfortable with. And I hope, no matter what your view on religion is, I hope you find a way to safely and happily live your life as the person who you are. And one of the things that is incredibly liberating about not accepting religious claims that don't have evidence behind them is that I'm not in any way bound to them. I'm not beholden to anybody's antiquated ideas about gender. I'm able to actually explore things and come to new understandings of those in the same way that I can explore the universe. I mean, granted, I can't go explore the universe. I'm not
assuming
astrophysicist or an astronaut.
Limited human capabilities.
Yeah, I get your point.
But we are completely in your camp with respect to your life and who you are and what your rights should be and how you should be allowed to live your life to the fullest as the person that you are. That's secondary to the God thing. So just because I'm up here in debate mode going, well, that's bullshit and that's bullshit. What about this? What about this? I don't want that to be taken as anything other than an academic exercise, which is actually, for me, that academic exercise, despite the fact that's what we do, it is of secondary importance. I'm a humanist.
I know.
I'm a skeptic, and I'm an atheist. And of those three, atheist is the least important part, because if there's ever evidence for God, that's the part that goes away, but the skepticism and the humanism don't.
That's very inspiring, actually.
We've helped a bit. I'm going to try to get on to some other calls, but call us back and let us know what's going on. And if you come up with more questions, whether they be academic exercises on causal arguments, or maybe you find something in the Quran that is more supportive of that. At the end of the day, though, even if there was a surah that said, irrespective of the gender assigned to you at birth, all people are free to transition, identify, and express gender in whatever way they want, because gender is just a bunch of BS, at least in the societal context. I mean, nobody's denying that there's not genetic differences between, individuals, but there's probably as many genetic differences between Dawn and myself as there is between, myself and you, or myself and a cis woman, or whatever else.
Yeah.
We kind of did the same thing. Well, I'm not gonna go down another sidetrack, but I get that you think that the one thing you said that bugs me a little bit is that you thought that religion made people open-minded about this stuff. And the reason that sticks with me is the sum total of my entire life's experience, including all of these years talking with people who have different religious beliefs, is I'm not aware of any religion with any sort of significant adherence that encourages open-mindedness. Some of them play lip service to it, and then they set up protective barriers. So, Christianity has verses about thou shalt not, or you shouldn't put the Lord your God to the test. God. This is how we get to God works in mysterious ways within Christianity, and why prayer tests fail. But my commandment is put everything to the test. Question everything. Question every answer, every authority. Don't sit there and, it's not like you're mired in questions all the time. It is exercise reasonable doubt and try to make sure that you're not convinced of anything until there's really strong evidential warrant for it.
Yeah.
And that is what open-mindedness is, not thou shalt not. That's not open-minded. You have to live this sort of way. You have to pray 5 times a day. You have to, face Mecca. You have to, wear niqab or hijab or whatever else. These sorts of things. You can't be out. These sort of legalistic, prescriptivist instructions don't ever seem to me to come from a mind that is either open or encouraging an open mind. And I find it fascinating, curious. I'd love to, send us an email, because I'd love to hear more about why you're convinced that it makes people open-minded.
I mean, honestly, the thought experiment that you gave me made me kind of doubt that.
Cool.
When you told me about if I went back in time and told Muhammad,
Yeah.
sorry, I was that like I described my situation. Yeah, I'm starting to doubt that, honestly.
And Islam being significantly newer, I've talked to Christians before and pointed out, if you grabbed 10 Christians from today that are in different denominations that agree and disagree on different things, and you took all 10 of them back 150 years and introduced them to 10 different Christians from their denominations, if those denominations existed, they wouldn't recognize each other and they wouldn't agree. They wouldn't agree on morality. You look back to the 60s when women were wearing miniskirts and people are like, oh my God, it's the end of the world. And of course, each year the world supposedly gets worse and worse and worse. And yet the stuff I see people wearing into church now would not have been acceptable when I was going to church as a teenager, for people to walk in wearing church. And it's because, hey, wait, the Bible doesn't say anything about what you should wear. Well, actually, yes, it does. You're not supposed to wear mixed fabrics, and you're also supposed to dress humbly, and you're not supposed to put makeup on, and all these other things that are in there. And yet, Christianity has conveniently ignored those. And it's moved forward and is more accepting of some things. But it's not the religion that is making them open-minded. It is the influence of the outside world that says, no, you don't get to tell us what to do anymore. And that seeps in and it corrupts Christianity. It's the reason that all religions are going to die.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Long, slow, painful death.
It's going to take a long while. I mean, I've got pretty good job security here, I think, even though this isn't a good
not
job.
our lifetimes, man.
Anyway, Kelly, I really appreciate the call. And by all means, email us, keep in touch.
That was one thing, like, when I was growing up, my my grandmother and her sisters, they didn't wear no fucking makeup. That was for floozies and hookers. Especially going to church. You don't wear makeup. You don't paint your face and all this other stuff. And now it's like shit changes, and now the church is more accepting, which means you're going against your original teachings. Well, things are changing, which means you're smarter and more moral than God in your holy book, because you're able to advance and change with the times and the cultures, and you realize that your religious book is stale, stagnant, and outdated. So you just, let's ignore this part and let's ignore this part, trying to cherry pick and bend it to what you want it to believe. What you want your religion to say and how you want to practice your own faith. But if you went by your religious doctrine wholeheartedly 100%, man, shit'd be crazy. Casting women outside the home or whatever when they're on their periods. Like, who the fuck does that? Like, the Bible tell you to do some crazy shit, yeah? There's certain instances where you can kill your kids. Or, like, man, look. If you rape a chick, you don't get punished if you marry her. Like, that's a stipulation in the Bible. Like, who would live by that? You know why? Because it was written by a bunch of dudes back in the day who wanted to be the head of everything, and they came up with a way to circumvent all of their good actions and bad actions. Well, rape is bad, but if you marry her, I guess you're good. You're good then if you marry her, and you won't get punished for raping her. So you know the dude walking around the village with the most wives, he's a rapey motherfucker. He's a rapey motherfucker. Nowadays, what we do to people who rape, sending them jail, put them in prison for a long time. I don't think long enough. I think people convicted of rape, I think castration is key, yo. Castrate these motherfuckers publicly. But we don't go for a lot of that shit in the Bible no more. Like how motherfuckers used to live, how they used to act one towards the other. Shit changed. Which means we are more moral than God. Because God wouldn't condone and consent to rape and slavery and genocide. But in the Bible, he clearly does.
So know how you're doing, and where you come out on this stuff. And if you find better arguments, we'd love to hear them.
I gotta grab something to eat shortly. I got up and just came right up here.
Is Jimmy there?
Yeah, I didn't think you were going to take me the first call. Hey, what's up, guys? I spoke to you guys about a year ago. I don't know if you remember my call.
No.
Both of you, actually.
Don't be disappointed, but I don't remember it yet. But it's possible I'll remember it in a minute.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had mentioned the studies going in Baltimore, Maryland, with psilocybin-induced, what these neuroscientists are calling mystical experience. And anyway, we got in. I think you were talking about how you were addressing what Jordan Peterson was saying during that last call.
Well, that wouldn't have been a year ago, but.
Less than a year, probably.
Yeah.
And then I said, well, have you looked into the research? And before the call ended, you told me that you would look into it, and I just wondered if you ever bothered looking into that research.
Probably not to the extent that I should, but what I did discover after both your call and the interaction with Jordan is that the label mystic experience is not well defined, and it is a self-reported label. So basically somebody is describing the experience as mystical, and it's more...
No, I had corrected that the last time. You had that same misconception the last time. None of the volunteers in this study described the experience as mystical. This is a term...
Okay, then what's the justification for saying somebody took drugs and had a mystical experience if they didn't say they had a mystical experience?
Oh, I don't know if you ever looked into neurotheology, for instance. They're trying to say, or the proponents of this neuroscience are trying to say that there's neurological and evolutionary basis for subjective experience traditionally categorized as spiritual or religious.
So that's where we have to pause.
Okay. And so...
That's where we have to pause.
Sure.
Traditionally classified as mystical or spiritual.
Yeah.
That still doesn't give any edification to what it means. Yeah. And by the way, that would be self-reported.
Well, in other words, they're trying to describe it as, it's not necessarily something induced by the psychedelic. They see it as a feature of consciousness itself. It's something...
That's an unfalsifiable proposition. If you take drugs and have an experience, you cannot say, I see this as something not induced by the drugs. You can't demonstrate that it wasn't induced.
No, that's what these researchers are claiming, that the induced psilocybin experience looks virtually identical to naturally occurring reported mystical experience.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you said reported mystical experience after we spent several minutes arguing about whether or not it was reported mystical. I want to know, I don't know if we went through this last time, but somebody says, I had an experience, either they or someone else labels it as mystical, and I still don't know what that means or how they determined that it wasn't drug-induced.
That's what I recall about the call, as far as why use that term, like mystical? Like, what does that actually mean, and what does it actually signify in the conversation?
So somebody has an experience. So hang on 1 second. Somebody has an experience. Some of them are on drugs and they have an experience. Some of them are not on drugs and they have an experience. This is I fully accept this. When I was in church, I would feel an experience that I would describe at the time as the Holy Spirit. I came later to understand that I had no justification for calling it that. It was just that everybody around me seemed to have similar experiences, and they all called it an experience of the Holy Spirit. And then I found out there's no justification for that. So now when people tell me they have a spiritual or mystical experience, I want to know what it is that they're talking about and what's the justification for using that language.
Okay, so it's been defined all the way back to the early work of William James, and I think what they're
just define it. I don't need a history lesson.
Okay, so I mean, if you look into the research, it's pretty elaborately defined. It's a pretty much scientific concept at this point.
No, it's fucking not. No, it's not.
Would you mind sharing that actual definition? Sure. Did that at least start there at the very least?
I can tell you what happened. People reported having experience that they described as mystical, and scientists went in and said, "Hey, let's try and figure out what this is."
No, not exactly. No, like I said, none of the volunteers described their experience.
Oh my gosh! All right, let me try this again, Jimmy.
Okay.
For millennia, people had experiences that they would describe as mystical or supernatural. And at some point, some scientists said, hey, there's a lot of people reporting these sorts of experiences. Let's investigate to figure out what they are. You don't think that's how else would scientists begin investigating?
Yeah. So
okay.
In other words, they're recognizing a phenomenon in consciousness.
No. Yeah. So that's the problem. There are people who think they are recognizing a phenomenon, and they may be, but what they're really doing is investigating a reported phenomenon.
I suppose you could put it that way if you'd like, but I think it's a bit more intelligent than that. I mean, I could try to describe it if you like.
I've been asking for a definition and a description, and all I get is, going back to William James.
Sure. So the way they describe it is by 6 features of the experience that manifest in what they call a complete mystical experience. And
I apologize, Jimmy. Your phone is breaking up very badly. Nobody can understand it. So you might want to try one more time.
Let me see if I can go aside real quick. Let me see.
So there are six criteria that have been defined as a complete mystical experience. Defined by who?
Yes. So the original definition was laid down by William James, and it's been refined since then throughout decades too. By
sure. Is that from Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds?
For even William James, I think it's the varieties of religious.
Varieties of religious experience. Okay, cool. I got it. I got those confused. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. And so where they're at now is the 6 criteria. The first one I was mentioning, the unity. They describe it as interconnectedness of people and all things, all is one, or pure consciousness. But this is like the collapse of the subject-object duality we experience in our experience. The next one is a sacredness or reverence towards a majesty that's also experienced. The third one they go by is a noetic quality, a sense of encountering what they describe in the studies as ultimate reality. But of course, these are the limitations. This is where the limitations of these measures meet the descriptions of the volunteers' experience. Not even the measures can really gauge what they're trying to express.
Yes, I can understand. That's why it's not science. But we can still. Somebody can say I'm experiencing pain. And if you're going to try and go through and create a good methodology for that, you're going to talk to them about describe the type of pain that you are feeling. Is it a burning pain, a stabbing pain, a throbbing pain, etc.? Then you're also going to try to give an approximation of the intensity of that. And with a single individual, you get nothing. You've reached no conclusion. So you begin expanding that. The problem is what I may think is